Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. I'm your DJ and host, Sam Wilson Jr., and I'm here to bring you the history genre of black music: gospel, jazz, blues, old school classic soul, old school hip hop, today's hip hop and R&B, Caribbean, Latin, Afrobeat, Afro-Latina, blue-eyed soul, disco, go-go, line dances, and the Lost 45s. So come with me as I take you on to a trip to the history genre destination of black music, right now on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience. I'm Sam Wilson Jr., and I have a special guest on my show. And this lady that I'm about to introduce is from the West Coast, representing the state of Oregon. She and her group, The Tourists Band, features some of Northwest's most dynamic musicians. They cover selections including Adele, Frank Sinatra, Anita Baker, Whitney Houston, Stevie Wonder, Bonnie Raitt, Michael Buble, Lady Antebellum, Norah Jones, Christina Aguilera, Earth, Wind and Fire, Sting, The Beatles, Katy Perry, Billy Joel, Michael Jackson, Sade, Santana, Burt Bacharach, Carole King, Marvin Gaye, Melissa Manchester, Dolly Parton, Barbra Streisand, and the James Bond 007 theme songs. She's also a dancer and actress appearing in theaters, movies, television, and radio. Her latest LP, If You Really Knew Me, which is available right now, streaming on iTunes. Please help me welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast, ladies and gentlemen, Malea. Hi, Malea, how are you?
Hi, Samuel. I'm great. Thank you.
Welcome to my podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's actually a great pleasure for me. So I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and your guest.
Alrighty, so I know that you had some other things, but I hope everything turns out. So again, thank you for taking the time out to be here on my show.
Thank you.
Okay, so the world may not know who you are, America may not know who you are, so it's my pleasure to interview you on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. So let us begin, shall we?
Sure.
Now, who did you want to be when you grow up?
Oh, I always wanted to be a singer and actor. From the age of 3 years old. I would just sit and listen to the radio, or I had a player piano. I started tap dancing when I was 3.5, so always wanted to be on stage, always.
Now, how old were you when you started singing?
I sang off and on through the early stages of my life. I was always in drama and musical theater, even in junior high and high school. And then when I actually really started singing was probably when I was about 20, 21, and worked with different musicians and started primarily with musical theater. And then from there, just led to acting and more dancing, and then again, some television and musical opportunities. So in my early 20s.
Alrighty. Was being a singer your calling?
Absolutely. I would say followed by acting and then dancing. Yeah, absolutely. And I actually released my first album, If You Really Knew Me, in 2005. And since then I've released 2 other albums. I released Bring Me Sunshine, and then right before our pandemic times I released Have You Seen My Angel, which was an original song I wrote.
Now, growing up, who were some of your favorite singers?
Oh my gosh, well, so many, but I would have to say, because watching movies on television, probably Barbra Streisand, because I loved Funny Girl, Funny Lady. I would sit by the TV or the radio and just sing her songs over and over again. Diana Ross, always loved her. Anita Baker, Carole King, Marvin Gaye. I listened a lot to Olivia Newton-John when I was in high school. Stevie Wonder. Of course, Burt Bacharach, who I had the great pleasure to meet and work with. And then from there, Melissa Manchester. I didn't listen to a lot of jazz growing up. Primarily, I listened to pop music. That was always, I do sing jazz, and I love a lot of like Ella Fitzgerald and so forth, but I would say that I'm always been more following, as I stated, even Sade, so Taylor Dane. So I think that's why I ended up being a cover band, is because I love the lyrics of all these different artists. I love the way they tell a story. I love the beat of the music. It's something that you can dance to. People can remember the lyrics. That's what's always driven me to want to sing their songs. Dolly Parton, another one. I mean, and her background is just unbelievable. And more recently, I've listened a lot more to Rod Stewart, which I listened to him when he was more rock and roll, but now he's kind of, and pop, but now he's even moved into more of the jazz genre. So it's interesting to see what he does with those pieces.
Now, who were your musical influences that had inspired you to sing?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again, Samuel?
Who were your musical influences?
I would say, well, I don't play an instrument myself. I can play my vocals on a piano, but listening to other artists, I really applauded Carole King because she could play and sing. Stevie Wonder could too, so I would say they were instrumental. Unfortunately, I just never picked up an instrument myself well enough, but I listened to them because their backgrounds were so varied, and I loved their original selections. So, although the other artists also wrote many of them, but I'd say influenced by Stevie Wonder, Carole King, and followed by, I just always really loved Diana Ross. So, say that's kind of the three that I initially kind of gravitated to originally.
Now, how did you came up with the name of the band called Malea and the Tourists Band?
Because I was working with a variety of musicians, and many of them do tour. I have as well as a guest singer, not with any of my musicians per se, but I thought, I didn't know of another band with that name. I thought it was intriguing, and because I was going to be working with a number of different musicians, I felt like that just fit the title, because I have to share with people that I'm never sure, like from one gig to another that I book, who's going to be on piano, who's going to be on bass, but I know that probably 80% of the musicians I work with, they tour, and so I have to wait until they're in town to book them, but I'll book other musicians that are available. So I just thought it suited the band name, since I wanted something that would catch people's attention and explain that, yes, most of my musicians, 80% of them, do tour or have toured.
Now, how does your singing voice match those music genres to all the artists that we just mentioned?
Well, you have to work at it, because otherwise every song will sound the same, and you want to make sure that you provide the best vocals to respect the artist that wrote the songs. Of course, I'm never going to sound exactly like Tina Turner, but I want to try to emulate as much as I can of her sound and the storytelling that she's trying to come across with. The same with Barbra Streisand. Though my vocals with Barbra Streisand, Celine Dion, probably because of my range, they fit their vocals, and I can share their selections probably better than some of the other artists. Sade and Taylor Dayne definitely have unique sounds to them, and obviously I'm not going to sound the same as Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye, but again, it's listening to their songs, trying to emulate their vocals as best as possible, and understand the story that they're sharing with their music, because there's a reason why they selected the songs that they're singing and have recorded, and why they've been successful.
Now, you have toured locally, and how many towns or cities have you toured so far?
Well, as far as countries and cities, I would say close to a dozen of them, and some of those would include, I've been in Vienna, the UK, Italy, then locally more like Palm Springs. I've sang in Finland, Paris, and I usually connect with friends that live in those states and reach out to them, and they've made the arrangements where I can go in and sing with other artists across the country and outside of the United States, which has been really a great opportunity for me.
Now, I got a chance to download your song called If You Really Knew Me from your LP, If You Really Knew Me, which is available now on iTunes. Tell us on what your song is all about.
Well, at last, that was kind of because I felt like I'm finally going to record an album. It's not going to be perfect. And actually, the individual that encouraged me to record it was Burt Bacharach. I had the opportunity, as I shared, to meet him and work with him when he was in Portland, Oregon. And he said it won't be perfect, but record an album that shares who you are, who your story is, the lyrics that speak about yourself or what you've gone through in life. And so that's kind of how that happened, and recorded it with a piano player, kept it pretty simple and more of like a living room style, laid back, although not all the songs are laid back. But at last, when I heard Celine Dion's version of it, I hadn't heard many artists sing the first verse, and that really sets the storyline up, and I just fell in love with the song more because I loved the opening verse. And then also I was thinking, at last I'm finally recording an album, so that's how that happened. And of course, on the opposite end would be What's Love Got to Do with It, Tina Turner. I loved her. I love that she's a dancer. I always appreciated her work, what she went through life. And I went through a lot of hard stuff in my life and not good relationships, both from growing up to later years. And I thought, yeah, her lyrics just kind of said, and some people questioned why I recorded that. They said, why are you singing a Tina Turner song in this song? But it was, in that time frame, it was important for me, and I took the words that Burt said and I said, yes, this is some of the stuff that I'm feeling in my life, and so that's why I selected that song. And so that's kind of how that came about, because it is totally off the spectrum. And Someone to Watch Over Me was in appreciation of 3 women that were mentors to me, that when I went off on my own in early ages, they were just there and offered me support, offered me opportunities for teaching fitness and dance. And so I wanted to write a song and dedicate it to them. And that's where that song came from, Someone to Watch Over Me.
Now, I got a chance to listen to your cover songs or remakes of Etta James' At Last and Tina Turner's What's Love Got to Do with It, but you did it your way, mellow jazz. And how did you decided to do those cover songs in your way you wanted to perform it?
Well, I knew there was no way that people were going to believe the story if I tried to emulate them too much. So I wanted to make some changes in it so that people would know that I was not trying to absolutely copy them or take away from their artist. And that because they have such a unique sound. So though I wanted to record these songs, I knew I had to make a few changes in them, and that's what I talked about with the accompanist on this particular album was Craig Badondo, and wanted to change it up. And because I was new actually as a solo artist, because I was coming off musical theater, which is a lot different. So my real background was actually dancing, acting, and musical theater. So to go in and record as a solo artist, this was basically, it was going to be pretty much a raw version. So that it was a way to learn how to be in a studio, how to listen to these other artists, still tell my story in the best way that I could through the songs. And it's been quite a few years now. So 20 in fact.
I want to bring an I want to bring an FYI to you and to our audience. Me growing up, when I was listening to some of the singers, like Isaac Hayes and Aretha Franklin, they had their songs, but some of the songs that I didn't know growing up were remakes of the original singers. It's like saying when Prince did some of his songs, but didn't become hits, it became hits for many other artists, including Melissa Morgan and the Bangles and the late Sinead O'Connor.
Oh yes,
Same thing with Isaac Hayes. He did all of those cover songs from whether it's from Glenn Campbell or Dionne Warwick or Jerry Butler. I'll give you an example. I got a chance to listen to that Hot Buttered Soul LP, and Isaac Hayes did a remake of Dionne Warwick's Walk On By. So he took that song and he stripped it and stretched it as far as wide as the eye can see. He can take a song like from 2 minutes and expand it to 12 minutes. And that's the same thing when he did Glenn Campbell's By the Time I Get to Phoenix. He did it his way. He take that song, he would either talk or rap, he would tell a story of what behind the song is all about, and then he took it all the way to 18 minutes. Now that was a masterpiece. And my late grandfather had the Isaac Hayes Movement LP. He did a cover of the Beatles, Something, but not that the original that the Beatles have done, but Isaac Hayes took it another way. And the same thing when he did Jerry Butler's I Stand Accused. Once again, he would talk or rap, tell a story about it, and then he would segue into it and took it to 11 minutes. So I kind of like me growing up when I hear some singers who did theirs, but I didn't know that it was a remake of someone else's. Like Aretha Franklin, the #1 hit Spanish Harlem. I didn't know that that song was originally made by Ben E. King. So when Aretha Franklin took it to a new direction for the 70s, she had took it and stretched it as far as wide as I can see. So when I compared to those songs from the artist, and I didn't know that that was a remake from the original artist back then, I kind of learned something from it. And with your situation, when you took those cover songs or remakes, you did it your way, the way that you wanted it to perform.
Well, and I think that's important for any artist to try to do it your own way, because we're never going to be able to emulate another artist. I mean, occasionally there are some artists that can do it. I mean, I can say there are some artists out there, but it's very difficult, because whenever you hear an original song, the natural position for people is to say, oh, that doesn't sound like so-and-so, or they shouldn't have done that song, So I think now with some of maybe with the American Idol, The Voice, some of that, I think that there's more of that happening there are artists, young artists in particular, I mean, really young artists, that they can emulate those other artists very well, because they've grown up with, these shows, and have had the opportunities where, from my standpoint growing up, I mean, I had a black and white TV for I don't know how many years, and we were lucky to have we had 45s, and a radio, but really we didn't have a lot of television shows other than what was that American Bandstand, and that was wonderful. But we really didn't have the opportunity as young artists to really be able to go out there and be put on stage and have vocal coaches. I didn't have that growing up. So not until in my 20s when I started enlisting various vocal coaches to see which was a good fit. And I went through a number of them, because I would get to a point, it's like, I need to learn more. So now these young adults, I mean, I'm sure you know too, I mean, I have friends that have kids that are like 5 and 6 years old, and they know how to stand and emulate the sounds even at their age, and the movements, because they are watching TV, they're watching the shows. So it's amazing, what opportunities they have.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned American Bandstand, because, not only I watch American Bandstand on a Saturday, but also Soul Train, and yes, Hee Haw. I watched a little bit of Hee Haw. And also on Saturday evening, they had Dance Fever, where they had all the dancers, dancing to the songs that we're talking about. And of course, Solid Gold. And we don't want to leave out the Midnight Special. And
Right.
of course, some of the other shows, amateur shows that we were just talking about, some of the few kids, who have their talent. Star Search was one of them. The original Star Search was hosted by the late Ed McMahon. That paved the way for some other talent shows that we just mentioned, American Idol and The Voice. So those little youngsters, they know how to sing in front of an audience, or if they're singing in the church choir, they would sing in front of the congregation. So there'll be lots of applause and lots of amens. So when we see those singers who maybe go on to superstardom, they get the foundation. So when they start in the church, and then later they will go into these talent shows, or some of the other shows that I just mentioned a few minutes ago, they'll be going on to superstardom. So I'm glad you brought up those shows, because that was me growing up watching all those shows on the weekends.
And the Sonny and Cher show too.
Oh yes. Yeah, all the variety
And she's
shows.
still, and look at her, she's still going.
Yeah, she's still going strong.
I
Every
know.
time I be looking at Cher, I'm best known for the wigs and everything. I was like, what's happened? She'd say like another wig, and then another set, another one she'll put on. But Cher did it all. She had her own variety show. After Sonny and Cher with The Voice, she had her own variety show. When she had the introduction, she struck her stuff on stage. And let me tell you, every Sunday night, Cher will put on any different dress that attracts the audience. And that's the same thing for some other variety shows. Donnie and Marie. I grew up on Donnie and Marie, and Carole Burnett, and Flip Wilson
Yes.
too. So those are the variety shows that I grew up on, where you had singers and comedians. And yes, some of the comedians they can sing, and the other way around. Some of the singers can act or do their comedy routines. And the same thing with NBC Saturday Night Live. I just did a bonus episode on the musical guest host. Those who are singers, they do double duty. They do their little comedy routines in between. So I'm glad you brought up those other ones because me growing up, I watching those too.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable. I mean, with Saturday Night Live, they just had this special on. It's like 50 years. Oh my goodness, crazy.
Yeah. Now, here's a question that I always ask my guests: living or dead, which singer you wish you wanted to meet or to perform with?
Well, quite a few, but let's see. I'll narrow it down to two. How's that? Um, Diana Ross and Barbara Streisand.
Okay, because not only they were singers, but they were also actresses too.
Correct.
So Barbara Streisand started out on Broadway, and yes, she's a singer that had all 20 albums plus. And in the movie, she did Hello, Dolly, and Funny Girl, and The Owl and the Pussycat. She did some comedy, and yes, she did some dramas too. And the same thing with Diana Ross. She does her thing. She made her acting debut on Lady Sings the Blues. She did a couple of movies, including Mahogany and the
One of my
version
favorites.
is. And yes, she did a couple of TV movies on ABC. And many of those, just to name a few. So I'm glad you mentioned those two because they can sing and act as well. Now, here on the Black Soul Music Experience, I always ask my guests who are the top 10 singers of all time. So, Malea, since I have you on my show, I'm going to be asking you who are your favorite top 10 R&B, black, and blue-eyed soul artists of all time. Now, here's how it works. We started like a top 10 countdown. You remember the show America's Top 10 with Casey Kasem, where he starts at number 10 and work our way up to number 1. So here on the Black Soul Music Experience, I always ask my guests who is the top 10. So we start at number 10, the bottom 5. Who were the
wow.
best singers but didn't get that much recognition. Then we get to the top 5, and then we find out who were the best singers of all time. Did that artist receive top 10 number 1 hits? Did that artist receive gold, platinum, double platinum, triple platinum, and today's diamond platinum LPs? Did that artist receive a Grammy or an American Music Award or a Soul Train Award or a BET Award or an MTV VMA Award? Did that artist got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or received their Kennedy Center honors? Or did that artist perform on American Bandstand or Soul Train or the Midnight Special or Saturday Night Live or Solid Gold? Or did that artist had their primetime special on CBS or NBC or ABC? Or did they have their own special on PBS during Pledge Month? Or did they had that live special, concert specials that is, was on HBO or Showtime? So, Malea, I'm gonna put you to the test. Are you ready to take that challenge?
Okay, so I'm starting from number 10, right?
Yes.
Taylor Dane.
Ah, yes, Taylor Dane, representing Rockville Center, Long Island, New York. She made her debut back in January of 1988 with her debut LP, Tell It to My Heart. So when I first saw that LP, I was just wondering, who is that artist? is she light-skinned black or Latino? When we saw the first album cover, but then Arista did a second album cover that she's white. I was like, oh, you was trying to attract the audience. But anyway, she had some hits. She had a couple of freestyle tunes, including "Tell It to My Heart," a love ballad, "I Will Always Love You," and other hits as well. She had two more albums, top 10 hits, even though she didn't get that recognition, but she had a couple of hits down the way. So we'll put Taylor Dayne at number 10. All right, who should be at number 9?
Okay, that would be Melissa Manchester.
Representing the Boogie Down Bronx, New York, Melissa Manchester. She came on the scene back in 1975 with her debut single, Midnight Blue. When I first heard that song, when WLTW in New York City was introduced, they were playing some of the new version of elevator music. Love songs with vocals. So when I first heard that song, I said, now that's some soulfully, blue eyes soulfully good. And she had some follow-up hits, including Don't Cry Out Loud, and also You Should Hear What She Thinks About You, and just to name a few. So we're going to put Melissa Manchester at number 9. Who should be at number 8?
Sade.
Representing Africa and the UK, Sade, or her real name, Helen Fuller Sade Adu. She came on the scene back in January 1985, best known for her smooth jazz and R&B tunes. When I first saw her music video on New York Hot Tracks on ABC 7 New York back in January 1985 with her debut hit, Hang On to Your Love. Now that was something new, something fresh, a new type of smooth jazz. Her other tunes, including Smooth Operator, and that was from her first LP, Primitive Love, and then her next album, Promise, which had hits including Is It a Crime and The Sweetest Taboo, Maureen, just to name a few, and she had other hits including Paradise, Stronger Than Pride, Kiss of Life, and some other tunes back then. And by 2000, she switched up a little to do some little Caribbean lovers rock music. So we'll put Sade at number 8. All right, who should be at number 7?
Yep, that would be Olivia Newton-John.
The late Olivia Newton-John, representing Australia and the UK. When I first heard this lady back in the fall of 1974 with her debut single, I Honestly Love You. When I first heard of Olivia Newton-John, I thought she was related to Elton John. But when I first heard that song, it was mellow, love song, as beautiful as ever. And yes, she did some country songs, including If You Love Me, Let Me Know. If You Don't, Then Let Me Go. That sort of country tunes. And she'll be later best remembered into the disco craze from the movie Grease. She did the duet with John Travolta, You're the One That I Want, and then Hopelessly Devoted to You. And then when she got into the 80s, her number one hit, Physical, number one hit on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles Charts, number 10 on Billboard's R&B Black Singles Charts. I'm telling you, so many black radio stations were playing that song. And when I saw the video, I was like, look at all the muscles. And yes, she was the guest host on NBC Saturday Night Live back in May 1982 for the season finale. So she did her thing. She can sing, she can act. So rest in peace to the late Olivia Newton-John. Okay, who should be at number 6?
That would be Anita Baker.
The one and only Anita Baker, representing Toledo, Ohio. She came on the scene back in the mid 80s. At first, I thought she had her debut LP in 1986, Rapture, including Sweet Love and Same Old Song, and her jazz song that I love, Been So Long. But I didn't know that she was on the scene back in the late 70s when she was a member of the group called Chapter 9. And the song was called I Just Wanna Be Your Girl. I bought a copy of Smooth Grooves. So she was around back at the end of the 70s and into the 80s with another LP that I didn't know that she did. The LP was called The Songstress, and the name of the song is called Angel. And I first heard it when The Quiet Storm was introduced to on black radio back in the mid 80s. So when I first heard that song, I can hear a little scratching in the background. I said, oh, okay, Anita Baker had a song before we knew her, made it big in 1986. So she had some other tunes, including Giving You the Best That I've Got, No One in the World, and just to name a few. So we'll put Anita Baker at number 6. Who should be at number 5?
Diana Ross.
The one and only Diana Ross came on the scene when she was the lead singer of the Supremes with their debut hit Where Did Our Love Go? Other hits including Baby Love and yes, Someday We'll Be Together, The Happening. They did duets with the Temptations, just to name a few. So Diana Ross was the lead singer along with the late Mary Wilson and the late Florence Ballard, and later Cindy Birdsong replaced Florence Ballard. So they had a string of number 1 hits on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts and number 1s on Billboard's Soul Singles charts back in the 60s. And then by 1970, she went on her own, did solos with her number 1 hit, Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Other hits including Touch Me in the Morning, the theme from Mahogany, and of course The Boss, Love Hangover, and another number 1 hit, Endless Love, duet with Lionel Richie. So Diana Ross did everything. She could sing, she could act, including those movies that I just mentioned, Lady Sings the Blues and Mahogany. And yes, she had a couple of TV specials. She had one on ABC back in 1971 and another special on CBS back in 1981. So we'll put Diana Ross at number 5. All right, who should be at number 4?
That would be Marvin Gaye.
The late great Marvin Gaye, best known for his hits back in the 60s. He made a debut coined Stubborn Kind of Fellow, Ain't That Peculiar. He'll be best remembered for doing duets with the late Tammy Terrell during the mid-late 60s. By 1970, he turned things around. His masterpiece LP, What's Going On, which features a concept album that he talked about everything from the Vietnam War to problems in the black community to the environment. When he dropped the single, What's Going On, it went to number 1 on Billboard's Soul Singles charts back in March of 1971 for 5 weeks. Other tunes, he did soundtrack LP to the movie Trouble Man. Another song, Let's Get It On, from his LP, number 1 on both Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts and on the Soul Singles charts. Other songs including Got to Give It Up and I Want You. And then by 1982, his number 1 hit when he switched over to CBS Records, Sexual Healing, number 1 back in December 1982 for 10 weeks. And he finally got an American Music Award and a Grammy Award. And that would have been his last appearance. In 1983, he did his version of the national anthem at the NBA All-Star Game, and he appeared on the Motown's 25th anniversary special. That will have been his last appearance before he was shot and killed back in the eve of his birthday of 1984 in the month of April. And later he got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So rest in peace to the one and only Marvin Gaye. Who should be at number 3?
That would be Celine Dion.
Representing Canada, Celine Dion. She made her debut back in 1990 with a song called Where Does My Heart Beat Now? When I first saw the music video on VH1 back in the fall or back in December of 1990, I said, who is this girl? And she sang so beautifully. She had other tunes, including her version of Patti LaBelle's If You Ask Me To, and also the song from the movie Titanic, top 10 hit, My Heart Will Follow On. That was the most requested song at many parties, weddings and other occasions. So we'll put Celine Dion at number 3. All right, who should be at number 2?
Barbra Streisand.
The one and only Barbra Streisand, singer, actress, producer, and co-founder of the First Artist Production Company, which was also along with the late Paul Newman and the late Sidney Poitier. She had a string of hits back in the 60s and 70s. I remember one of her songs, including People, People Who Need People. I love that song. Also had other tunes, including The Way We Were, which she starred in that movie, and other tunes, including remakes of the Four Tops, Shake Me, Wake Me When It's Over, and her other tunes. She teamed up with Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees. A couple of hits, including Woman in Love and What Kind of Who. And yes, she had a string of hits back in the 80s and 90s, and she's still kicking. So we'll put the one and only Barbra Streisand at number 2. All right, who should be at number 1?
Burt Bacharach.
Burt Bacharach, one of the best musicians and songwriters ever. When I first found out who is Burt Bacharach, he'll be best remembered for writing songs for Dionne Warwick. He and Hal David were the ones who wrote the songs, including Walk On By, Do You Know the Way to San Jose, Don't Make Me Over, just to name a few. Those tunes that Burt Bacharach have written for Dionne Warwick. Yes, he was once married to Angie Dickinson. When I found out, when I went to Barnes & Noble back in the early 2000s, I was just listening to some of the hits from Burt Bacharach, and he wrote the song called Nikki, and that was the song that he wrote and dedicated to his daughter who had mental issues. And that song would later become the theme for the ABC Movie of the Week. So when I first heard that song, I said, wait a minute, isn't that theme from the ABC Movie of the Week? And didn't ask Burt Bacharach's permission to use that song? But anyway, Burt Bacharach had churned out hits, and then when he came back in 1985 to reunite with Dionne Warwick with the number 1 hit, That's What Friends Are For, along with Stevie Wonder, Gladys Knight, and Sir Elton John, that was a turnaround. And originally, that song was originally written back in 1982 with his new wife, Carole Bayer Sager. And that was written for the movie Night Shift in 1982. And then it re-released again in 1986, something new, something fresh, went to number 1 on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts, number 1 on Billboard's R&B Black Singles charts in 1986. And that song, proceeds from that song went to the American Foundation for AIDS Research, and it was founded by the late Elizabeth Taylor. So we're putting Burt Bacharach at number 1. Well, Malea, thank you so much for being here on the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and thank you for taking the time out to be with me on my show.
Well, thank you so much for asking me, Samuel.
Okay, now before we go, where can we follow you for any upcoming events, and where can we follow you on social media?
You can follow me on my website, which is musicbymalea.com. I'm also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and you can find me under either Malea and the Tourist or just under Malea. And you can find me on YouTube, Apple Music, and Spotify as well.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Download all the artists that we have talked about on this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Visit iTunes.com, Spotify.com, or purchase a CD at Amazon.com. Make sure you follow Malea. Look for her on the website. Follow her at musicbymalea.com. You can also look for her on Facebook and Instagram. Also, you can look for Malea and the Tourists. And you can follow all of her songs, which is available on Apple and Spotify. And check out her videos streaming right now on YouTube. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to check out this episode, please subscribe by going to the link. The link is riverside.fm/studio/Samuel-Wilson Jr.'s. Don't forget to add the S to the end, -studio. And yes, I will be posting this episode on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And if you have a hard time getting on to riverside.fm, then please become a member and subscribe to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And don't forget, folks, I will be posting this episode on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And please pass it on. Thank you for joining me as I close out this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience.
Well, that's about it for this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. I'm Sam Wilson Jr. Thank you for joining me, and please tune in next week for an all-new episode. The Black Soul Music Experience podcast is sponsored by the support of listeners like you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe by going to riverside.fm/studio/Samuel-Wilson Jr.'s -studio. And don't forget to check out my audio podcast episodes by becoming a member and subscribe to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And also check out my video podcast episodes by subscribing to youtube.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And please leave your comments, feedbacks, and replies by going to my Facebook homepage. Visit facebook.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And you can also tweet me on X, aka Twitter, at Sam Wilson Jr. 66. As always, parting, remember this: reach for the top and your dreams will come true, and it can happen to you. From all of us, take care, God bless. Thanks for listening, have a good week, and please be safe.